Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Today we have a very special guest. This is the third or fourth time she's going to be with us, but one of the most important things, folks, is that she makes grassroots mean something. And you know what we've seen? We've seen it paid off. Natalia Cornelio, best known as Nata, judge from the 351st District Court. How are you doing today, Natalia? Or I need to change that. How are you doing, Judge Cornelio?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. How are you, Egberto?
I am doing fine. Just before we get started, I just want to tell you how proud I am to see that one of the hardest working activist lawyers in Houston has now become a judge, one of the, somebody who's going to really make a difference in our society here in Houston. How are you doing today? Otherwise, I know you're probably tired from all the getting together.
No, I mean, I'm a little tired from the work. It's a ton of work, the job, which I expected, and I'm grateful for. There's so much to do, and I give it my all. So that's why I did this. My husband is like, I thought that after the campaign it was going to be less busy, and I was like, no, baby, it's going to be more busy until we get a good system, and maybe even for the whole time. So,
well,
but we're good.
What is interesting is I read some messages that you put out there that you pointed out that your court is actually overstressed. I mean, you just have thousands of cases that you have to take care of.
It's true. My court has at least 2,700 cases and, hundreds of cases that are set for trial. So one of my priorities, which came from when I was a lawyer and when I ran and before I became a judge, is knowing how important access to the courts is, right? We don't trust a system that doesn't give people meaningful access to it. It's such a challenge to balance that really important priority with the sheer quantity. So, for example, I have almost 400 cases set for trial. I'm just one person, one court. If we were to do one trial a day with no weekends, with no holidays, and it would only take one day to do a trial, which is usually it takes more than a day to do a felony trial, we wouldn't be done in a year. And there's still 2,300 cases to dispose of and take care of. So it's a really big challenge. I think one of the big requests that's going to come out of this, that's been coming out of this, is for more courts. And I know that it's always dangerous to expand the infrastructure without expanding alternatives. And so hopefully that could be done in unison. And as we expand the courts, we also expand, diversionary programs and resources available for mental illness and for drug addiction and for other addiction and for families who are, dealing with violence and doing violence intervention programs. I mean, we really need all of it to be able to get a grasp on the sheer quantity of cases that are coming through our criminal justice system right now.
Now, you are you run a criminal court, is that correct?
Yes, it's a felony criminal court that serves all of Harris County.
Okay, now what I don't understand, and I think most people don't, and I know this sort of reflected around the country as well. What's the structure of the court system? I know there are felonies. I know there are misdemeanor courts. I know there are municipal courts. There's also state courts, and then there are federal courts. Can you give us a breakdown? But what we try to do here at Politics Done Right is to educate our people as far as how this system works, because people are just confused.
That's fair. Yes, on the sort of most local scale, there are city courts, municipal courts, as well as justice of the peace courts. These handle Class C misdemeanors, traffic offenses, ordinances that are passed by the city or by the county. And they'll handle kind of a little bit of criminal, a little bit of civil, but it's more about the locality of it, lower level, close to home, ordinance based. And then there are county courts, which are divided into probate courts, as well as civil courts, as well as criminal courts. And the county criminal courts handle misdemeanors. And the county civil courts handle, small claims and other smaller level disputes. Then there are state level courts. And the trial level, which is like the first court that you'll have access to, is the district courts. And the state divides the district courts into family courts, into juvenile courts, into civil courts, and into criminal courts. So the criminal courts handle felonies, the civil courts handle civil disputes, the family courts handle family court issues like, divorces and other custodial issues. And the juvenile courts will handle juvenile criminal charges as well as CPS cases. And then, there's appellate courts, which handle all of the below. And then there's Supreme Courts, which is one is civil and one is criminal. And that's our state court system. There's district, appeal, and Supreme/criminal Supreme, which is called Court of Criminal Appeals. And then the federal system is an entirely different track, which handles federal statute-based litigation as well as federal crimes. And they're, basically the courts, district and magistrate, appellate, and supreme. And it's just a question of, is it a federal law or is it a local law? So people think federal crimes means more serious, but it doesn't. It could mean crime on a reservation. It could mean crime on federal land. It could mean, and it's a lot of interstate commerce, which triggers federal jurisdiction, which is, traveling across state lines, or drugs are considered to have federal jurisdiction because demand for drugs is a national phenomenon. And so it's hard to get your head around it. And I wonder if my explanation was even helpful to anybody.
No, actually, I learned a lot. I think I understand it. I mean, I first of all, you gave the leveling of the federal courts, you gave the leveling of the state courts. Anyhow, Natalia, or Judge Cornelio.
You can call me Natalia. It's fine.
Well, since this is sort of a formal interview, I like to go appropriately with the judge. Let me ask you this, Judge. You started out as a lawyer, and you've been on MSNBC and all these things working for the people. So you have an intrinsic feeling as far as what needs to be done out there in the community. We don't have a lot of judges that are that way. Many of the judges are Ivy League guys and mostly guys. Ivy League, and they don't really share anything with what's happening in the community with the people that are coming to them. How can we best get more people like you on the bench?
Oh, I mean, I think that with every generation we pay it forward. We need people like me to pay it forward and, be involved in bringing up the youth to be more involved. The thing about the legal profession, Egberto, is that lawyers, it's not that we don't have the best personality, but we sort of get drawn to our profession. We can get really good at the job, but it's a niche. Like, we like reading, we want to apply these rules to these facts, and it's a very different skill from interacting with people. And it's a very different skill from, even some of the frustration I experience as a criminal judge is that these lawyers are excellent lawyers and they can litigate the question of guilt or innocence. But when it comes to resources that their clients might need, this is not all of them, but some of them, it's not their strength to be a social worker to someone who is really suffering. They know the law back and right, and they're the lawyer you want when you really need a legal defense. But when you need a home, or to figure out your correct prescription for psychotropic medication, or to figure out what a plan is. This is another specialty that we don't have healthy relationships to build intersectionality and ensure that lawyers are supported to not just, to know where to find non-legal resources and to have the sort of patience and space to explore them and recognize that that's also important. So I think just teaching that and building that, we have a long way to go. I get frustrated every day by the limitedness of mental health resource and addiction resources and housing resources. For people that come through the system, we really need to build that out and familiarize everyone who's involved with what the resources are.
Well, as a judge of the 351st, as somebody, who acted on this from the side of being a lawyer, now from the side of being a judge, And also, I still remain that once an activist, always an activist. I think it is important that your message gets out there, that people understand that, I think the message has a lot more weight. When you were a lawyer, and you make certain kinds of complaints about the jurisprudence, judicial system, it would be taken like, well, she's a defense lawyer. What is she going to say? Now you're on the bench. You have experience as far as how things work. That's a hell of a platform, assuming that one does not get the air of the bench where, well, now you're the queen, you know. But you know what I'm saying.
No, I do. It's a responsibility, and I take it with as much humility as possible, but it's a responsibility. If people listen to you because you have a certain role, then, it's a big responsibility. So I embrace the responsibility and, can only do my best. And I know that I'll get better at it. I know that in a year I'm going to be like, wow, when I was a 1-month judge, I can't believe it, like how little I knew compared to what I know now. And it doesn't mean, I think it's incredible that I can do the job. I surprised myself almost. I knew that I could do it, but I didn't know what it was going to be like. And that I feel competent and I trust the questions that I'm asking and the information that I'm getting before making decisions, but I know that it'll just get better and better. And, I do take the responsibility of my role very seriously on the bench and off the bench.
Well, I don't think any of us who know you had any doubt. I watch a lot of your, when your acceptance of your certification or whatever it is that is called, and it continues to draw one, because it is like, it's more than humility. It's about the dedication of service. I mean, one can be humble and still not show that they're going to be in service to you, right? There's some intersectionality between humbleness and service, but it's not, they can also be mutually exclusive. And I watched, I started to watch your thing, and then I watched all of the support that you got from the community, with all the people that are there to, you're, come on, judge is important. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like the sexiest political position. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And when I saw the support that you've gotten from the community, people like, now I'll use the term, Nata is doing it. Nata is doing it. It was like, wow, that's the kind of judge I would love to see throughout, not only Harris County, not only Texas, but throughout the country, because it seemed to me like a lot of the problems that we have, both socioeconomically and criminal, judicial, whatever, we would be able to get over that if we had people with that kind of a mantra on them. Your thoughts?
Well, and thank you for saying that. That's really sweet. I'm so grateful for your support and that you even watched the investiture ceremony. But I think it goes to the point that we've been talking about since we met, which is that representation matters. And my community, part of the reason that I did my investiture ceremony the way that I did is because almost everyone I know, except for my fellow judges and lawyers, have never been to an investiture. And frankly, I hadn't gone to one until like a year before my election, when my colleague got elected, Genesis Draper, who swore me in, and that was my second one. My other one was like 1 month before, where my other colleague had gotten elected. And my mom, I asked her to speak, and she's like, I had to look up investiture. I didn't know what it was, and I realized it's a big deal. And so part of it is, this is important because my people know that we don't have judges or anything that's sexier. We don't have city council people. They never answer our calls. We don't have state reps in our community. We don't have that kind of access. And so I think it's just really special for people to know somebody who's gotten recognition and is able to do work and represent in the process. So I'm doing my best.
Yeah, you're doing great. Now, how many people work in your office? I mean, in other words, how many people do you have with all that work that you have? How are you structured?
So I have a staff. I personally have a staff of 2 people, which is my court reporter and my coordinator, who coordinates my schedule and the docket and appoints lawyers to people. I mean, she has so much to do, and bless her, because So then we have, let me get finished. We have 2 bailiffs in the courtroom. We have clerks, 2 clerks in the courtroom that help make sure that the information is recorded. And we have a probation officer in the room. When during the freeze, pretty much everybody lost power. But I was worried about people who were being newly arrested and having access to court and, cases that needed attention. And so I was trying to do my best to make sure that we could be available for emergencies. And then once I had power, that we can get some folks in the jail to come see me and get some lawyers there and have hearings and basically do court. But my coordinator to help me do this, she lost power and she had nowhere to go with her 4 children. She was in her car, using her car's hotspot to make this happen. And so, I want to shout out to her and the staff. Sheriff's office got this like backup courtroom that had Zoom so that defendants who were in jail could come to court. I mean, really, I put the intention out there and asked for it, but people worked really hard to make it possible. So it's a very small staff, but they know what I care about. And they've been really patient with me and gracious with me and gracious to the community to try to make it happen.
How many judges did that?
I think everybody did their best. And I know, Judge Martinez, my other Latina who got elected with me, she had court every day. She didn't lose power. And so she made sure that every day she saw anybody who was a new arrest, who was in jail.
She did it from home at Zoom as well, or?
She did. So the Zoom, because of the pandemic, we actually had some infrastructure to be able to respond. And I think that's the cargo, we need to take everything, all the blessings with all the sort of tragedy and use what we have built in order to be able to respond to emergencies to make it better the next time. And it was hard because people didn't have power, but to the extent that we could make adjustments, people were able to have access to the courts, even in that week during the freeze where the judges wanted it, because people were willing to step up.
Wow, that is great. That is great to know. Now, Natalia, as far as what you want to see going forward, in other words, you got to the la meta, okay? So now what do you want to do? What stamp do you want to make on the 351st?
Ooh. Well, first I want it to be smooth, right? I want anybody that comes in there to be like, that court everything was smooth, but also everybody was very respectful, was very nice. And I felt heard. Like, even if I didn't get what I wanted, I felt heard, and that was fair. And that makes me have confidence in the system. So, we're tweaking it and our processes and our procedures and our access to make sure that folks can have that experience. It's not as easy with a 2,700 case docket to make it smooth for everyone. There's lots of moving pieces, but that's absolutely a goal, and to be a model in that regard and to set standards of respect and decency and effectiveness and representation on both sides to make sure people have confidence in the system. And then just to be a court that's accessible to the public. We've been live streaming when COVID required our in-person to shut down. We don't let people into the building on the same scale that we used to. And so we live stream court. So anybody can watch it because the courts are for the public. Open courts is a fundamental, right and protection. And then once things get a little bit less restrictive, to invite groups in, invite schools in, talk a little bit more about how it's going and what it is so that folks can learn the questions that you have. This is what our court does. This is how it works. Do you want to be a lawyer? Do you want to be a judge? Make sure that you serve on the jury when you get summoned instead of trying to dodge it. This is why it's really important, and be able to promote the civic engagement and the lifting up of youth as a court.
Marilyn Burgess is doing some important work right now in trying to get the jury system to be more to look more like what Houston looks like. So we just have a whole lot of good people running in this thing. Folks, let me tell you, you hear us talk a lot about activism. You hear us talk a lot about working the fields to bring the right people to the job. You hear us talk about grassroots. This is what grassroots success look like. We put people into power who really earned it, who really worked for it, and who are really making it beneficial for us all. That is what it's take. What we talk about is not pie in the sky or anything like that. It's about making sure that we put the people there who are there to serve and who we are there to help serve. Natalia Cornelio represents that. She represents that. So, Judge Cornelio, I always ask this as my last question, and that is, what would you have liked me to ask you that I didn't?
Ooh. I don't know. What are you reading? Like,
it's a green screen.
No, I think just, it's a great question. I guess, I welcome your listeners to get involved, to reach out to me. Our website is active. You can contact me through the website, nataliacornelio.com. You can watch our investiture if you've never seen an investiture before. The link is available on the website, but it's nataliacornelio.com/investiture-ceremony. And I would love for the community, to be a part of that ceremony that I'm really proud of having work to do. And I'm trying to read books. It's really hard. I'm very busy. So I've even done some audio listening, but I'm trying to read books so that I can stay grounded and empathetic and not become too focused in just my work without keeping perspective outside.
Judge Natalia Cornelio, you're doing a great job of it. We are very proud that you lograste la meta. You got to the goal. You did it. So thank you very much for having given Politics Done Right this interview, and please keep up doing the great work that you've always done, that you're doing, and that we know you're going to continue to do.
Thank you for having me on the show. I love being on, and anytime, hopefully we'll have a different story to tell in a year, as far as how it's going and how COVID changed things and how we're surviving with that backlog that we're going to have to start actually doing trials for. So I would love to keep visiting with you.
Judge Natalia Cornelio, open door for you any day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Egberto.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.